Hello and welcome to Paraculture Coco, home of the Coco. I have ideas, and most of those ideas are about dismantling patriarchal myths to heal our wounds of dehumanization and obedience to irrational authority. Today, let's debunk myths of biological essentialism that say patriarchal gender roles are so hardwired and immutable that before civilization ever even existed, there was a gendered division of labor. Men were big, strong hunters, and thus protector and providers, while women were docile gatherers, and thus exclusively passive mothers. This misconception implies that the real housewives of early foragers didn't even need a house to know their place, barefoot and pregnant in the berry patch. Hunting was only for boys, I swear. Women's weak, hollow bones couldn't wield a weapon, can only hold a baby. It's also silly, but too many people buy into this false narrative to justify creating artificial laws and boundaries that subjugate women for the purposes of elevating men. Just listen to Tucker Carlson's Scooby-Doo confusion that feminists recognize women as fully sovereign and capable people.
Why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women. The women are extremely liberal. No one talks about that. Increasingly they do, especially after the last election. There's a 45-point difference between men and women. The men are extremely conservative, increasingly. The women are extremely liberal.
What are they liberal on? What issues? Like, what does that mean, liberal?
Oh, they're very feminist.
Like, actually?
Extremely feminist, yes.
They don't believe that, do they?
I think they do.
Really?
Absolutely,
How could
yes.
you believe that?
I
think
think
gender roles are a construct, that none of this is inborn? Like, you'd have to be an idiot to think that.
they like the idea of it. They like because of course I think all women naturally want strong men.
Of course, obviously.
They naturally want a Chad. They
Yeah.
want like a tall, buff guy. But I think they like the idea of none of them want to work either. None of them actually want to work.
No, that's what I'm saying. Of course. That's
right.
It's obviously true. It's always been true. Work outside the home.
Right.
They don't have enough work at home. There's
Yes.
a lot to do. But no, I completely agree. So that's why I question, like, they're feminists in what sense?
Yes. And, they like these vague appeals to equality. We want a chance to work and we want respect. And, ultimately, I think the whole political system is just based around women never being accountable for any of their choices.
Can women really believe that they are fully human? That they're not just a baby box who exists to cook, clean, and admire men? The weirdest part of these myths to me is how many patriarchal women buy into biological essentialism and man the hunter myths, while also owning more guns than some small nations, right? Like, some of these patriarchal ladies are armed to the teeth and sending out Christmas cards with AR-15s, while also claiming women could not have been hunters because only men hunt. It's like a really strange cognitive dissonance, right? Anyway, let's debunk, and then we're going to talk about why these myths were created. So our main source is a 2023 study published in PLOS ONE Journal, where an international team conducted a meta-analysis of ethnographic data and observations collected from over 391 foraging societies that existed all over the world from the early 1800s through present day. So scientists use this type of ethnographic data to infer insights about foraging lifestyles, and then they contextualize the observations within archaeological data, right? Like bones, burials, DNA, and whatnot, to form theories about how ancient humans may have lived. So what did these researchers find? That women hunt and have always hunted, even with babies on their back. Regardless of maternal status, the research found that 79% of the studied societies had documentation of women hunting. And of those societies, 87% of them described women's hunting as intentional and strategic, while the remaining described women's hunting as opportunistic. So intentional hunting means that women develop specific skills, strategies, and weapons to go out and hunt, to pursue game. Opportunistic hunting is happenstance. Like, if a rabbit happens to appear nearby and a woman throws a rock to smash its brains in, like, that's happenstance. She capitalized on a random opportunity. So overall, women intentionally hunted in about 8 out of 10 societies, but in societies where hunting was considered the most important form of subsistence, women hunted 100% of the time. Quoting the study, "The widespread presence of female hunting suggests that females play an instrumental role in hunting, further adding to the data that women contribute disproportionately to the total caloric intake of many foraging groups." Oh, what's that now? Women are natural providers, not men? Woo, woo, woo. So we already knew that women led gathering and food processing efforts more than men, but it was assumed that in reciprocation, men must have done all of the hunting. But that's not true, right? Women just provided more through a greater variety of activities and strategies compared to men's more exclusive focus on hunting alone. Let's read on. Quote, "This data suggests that females not only prepare to hunt and actively pursue game, but also that they are skilled in the practice. This is supported by both the existence of specialized toolkits, as well as distinct strategies compared to their male counterparts, potentially relating to different training regimes, as well as different cultural norms surrounding the hunting, processing, and eating of meat. For example, the tools used by Akta women from the Philippines are markedly different compared to Akta men. Whereas Akta men rely heavily on a consistent strategy of bows and arrows, women are much more likely to have personal preferences and show variation. Some women prefer hunting only with knives. A few women use bow and arrows, and others use a combination of the two. Among the Aka, women are also flexible, carrying nets, but also spears, machetes, and crossbows. Even when nets are primarily used in hunting, sometimes the women will wield the nets and sometimes the men. That's fair. In addition to weapon choices, women further employ a greater flexibility of hunting strategies compared to men. For example, women hunt with a variety of partners, including their husbands, other women, children, dogs, as well as hunting alone. In contrast, men primarily hunt alone with a single partner, their wife, or with a dog. And that last part is super interesting to me, that women prefer flexibility and variety of hunting strategies. It actually reminds me of this study suggesting that women require more sexual novelty than men do, and that women's sexual satisfaction decreases more rapidly than men's in monogamous relationships. All of which flies in the face of patriarchal conditioning, right? The same way women are supposed to avoid hunting and fighting, women are supposed to be way less interested in sexual pleasure than men are, right? We're only supposed to barter sex for security or resources or whatever, not actually have the agency to explore a variety of desires and fantasies for our own fulfillment. It's interesting. It's almost like we women crave novelty and variety when hunting, fighting, and getting our freak on. Almost like we're not inert objects, like we're full human beings or something. So if you'd like more information, I've linked to that research on sexual novelty in the description, and drop a line in the comments if you want me to make a full video exploring that in more detail. All right, so back to women hunters. What happens to babies when women hunt? Are babies left in the care of forest creatures, like a scene out of Snow White? Nope, it seems like babies and young children are often brought along hunting expeditions or potentially left in the care of other adults when that's not feasible. Quoting the paper again. Suggestions that children are put in danger by accompanying hunts can be mediated with current literature on the numerous ways in which children and infants are carried during expeditions by parents and alloparents. Alloparents is like a parental caregiver that's not genetically related, right? The importance of infants remaining with adults versus being parked is an important part of our lineage, with children accompanying the wide range of expeditions consistently evidenced in the archaeological as well as ethnographic record. That all tracks. Our ancestors would not have left a baby behind when migrating. And really, until the Industrial Revolution, most children worked alongside their parents and caregivers, whether that was farming or running a general store or whatever. So, we evolved communally, not in such isolated social roles, right? So let's now turn our attention to the archaeological record. The research so far was evaluating fairly modern forager groups, right, from the 1800s onward. So what does the archaeological record have to say about our ancient ancestors? Well, it says that ancient women hunted too, fools, and participated in warfare. Quoting again, one of the most prominent discoveries recently includes a 9,000-year-old burial located in the Andean highland area of Peru. The burial included an adult female alongside a hunting toolkit consisting of stone projectiles as well as animal processing equipment. Researchers typically presume that stone projectiles buried alongside males are hunting tools, but are less persuaded when projectiles are associated with females. You don't say. So why would spears with man bones equal man the hunter, but spears with lady bones is what? Halloween decor? Like, what could possibly be motivating that divergence in attribution? What do you think? What do you think? Is it maybe that our patriarchal conditioning distorts how we perceive data and phenomena to project our gendered assumptions onto the past regardless? Making our gendered assumptions a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like saying gender roles are biologically determined? Do you think it might be that? So the research goes on to explore hunting and war tools found within female burials throughout the Americas, and they conclude, quote, in fact, their analysis suggested that females represented up to 50% of big game hunters from the Americas prehistorically. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Big game hunting in the Americas was like mammoths. It doesn't get bigger than that. The ancient Americas didn't naturally have livestock populations like cattle, horses, pigs, or sheep that were easily domesticated like ancient Europe did. So hunting would have been a more important form of subsistence. And since we already know that when hunting is the most important form of subsistence, women participate 100% of the time, it makes sense that ancient women throughout the Americas performed at least 50% of the big game hunting. Like, that math is mathing. So let's read one more archaeological example, shall we? Quote, in 2017, a well-known burial in Sweden revealed an individual alongside weapons and equipment associated with high-ranking Viking warriors. The individual was assumed to be male considering the historical interpretation of the prevalence of male warriors, but genomics confirmed that the individual was a female. In addition, archaeologists discovered a 2,500-year-old burial site that contained 4 females associated with weapons and warrior equipment. The age of the females ranged from 12 or 13 years old to 40 or 50 years old and were believed to be a part of the nomadic group known as the Scythians. Yo, Scythians is a cool name. So Scythian women were warriors in their culture, as supported by the fact that 1/3 of the females in the society were buried with weapons. Yeah, that's not anecdotal, right? The purpose of these anecdotes is twofold. Firstly, researcher bias shapes science's interpretation of data, and it behooves each generation of scientists to ensure that paradigms fit the existing data. Secondly, the number of anecdotes of females taking up weapons and tools interpreted as violent is extensive across time as well as space, making such examples more of a pattern of female behavior than anecdotal. Interesting. So, modern foraging communities and the worldwide archaeological record clearly demonstrate that women have always been hunters, providers, protectors, and warriors in our own right while making babies and raising children. The research did acknowledge a few examples of modern foraging communities from the 1800s onward, right? Where women did not hunt at all because they were explicitly banned from doing so, which would suggest that an absolute lack of women's participation is typically the result of patriarchal gender norms, men preventing women from participating, not the cause of patriarchal gender norms. Which gets at the heart of these gendered labor myths. They were created to subjugate women, yes, but even more so, I believe the original impulse to control and limit women's pursuits has always been about creating male ego. If women are capable of leading and participating in all realms of life, and we have the capacity to create life and nurture children, then what is men's unique contribution? What makes women need men? What is their exclusive domain? If women are disproportionately providing through gathering and hunting compared to men's contributions, and women are disproportionately performing cooperative care work like child rearing, then what is men's distinction? What can men do that women cannot? And the answer is that there really isn't a realm of life or activity that is exclusively the domain of men, that women cannot participate in because of natural boundaries or inadequacies, right? But there are aspects of life that men cannot participate in, specifically pregnancy and childbirth, right? They are welcome. They are welcome to be caregivers and cooperatively participate in that realm. So patriarchal gender norms were really created out of spite and insecurity over this truth, right? Patriarchy created the false gender binary that biological sex determines your social role to justify men hoarding resources and weaponry away from women to limit us to child rearing only, the one thing they cannot do. So they drew a line in the sand and were like, the one thing that you can do that we can't, that's all you're allowed to do. The rest of life is for us. That's dumb. They denied women our own fullness of humanity and forced us into manufactured dependence upon men. And that manufactured dependence betrays the truth here, right? That men are codependent on women and that men need women more than women need men. So the gender binary is about men dominating women, sure, but it is also about ensuring every man is entitled to own a woman, to subsidize him while pretending that her work is the result of his leadership, right? And we talked about that dynamic in our last video. Patriarchy wants women to subsidize men, not submit. Go scope it if you haven't yet. So claiming there's a biological division of labor is about conditioning mandatory codependence and enmeshment. No one is whole and capable on their own. We're all just half a person in need of another to fuse with to become whole, right? That's centering men's codependence. And it's a lie, right? It's a lie. We're taught that love and partnership is two halves forming one whole. But in reality, love can only exist between two already whole people, right? Love never diminishes the integrity of either person. So these gender myths and norms are about promoting and maintaining mandatory heterosexual marriage for all to ensure every man gets a woman to be his caretaker, right? And if you're only half a person and biologically you're only allowed to do this part of life, well, yeah, then that is the only way to become whole, right? To fuse with the other. So patriarchy requires these myths of biological essentialism to maintain its social system of male private for-profit ownership of women, right? It's about ensuring every man is assigned a woman so that she does all of the essential work of life for him, meeting human needs day in and day out, providing for him, while also acting as the shock absorbers for male dysfunction. Wives are expected to be the shock absorbers for male dysfunction, containing his aggression, violence, and antisocial impulses at home so the larger community and society doesn't have to deal with it. And that's what Scott Galloway's recent talking points are all about. Hear him.
Men need relationships. They need it more than women. There's this cartoon of a woman in her 30s who didn't find romantic love and is now living with cats. The reality is she's fine. Yeah. When women don't have a relationship, they pour that energy into their friends and their work. When a man doesn't have a relationship, he pours it into conspiracy theory, porn, and misogyny. Wow. Men need relationships much more than women. So this is...
Yeah, so when women don't have relationships, we productively invest our energies in community and self-development. But men focus on antisocial stuff, right? But Scott G is making it sound like men would cease with the antisocial behavior and obsessions if they had a relationship. But really, I don't think that's true. Women would just have to privately mitigate it so it wouldn't become a social issue. And all of this is to say, patriarchy is about disguising men's codependence on women, right? Patriarchal gender roles center and serve men's truth. They need women's creative leadership, our adaptability, our nurturing, our care, way more, right? Women don't actually need men in the same capacity at all. Does that mean men are inherently worthless? No, absolutely not. It just means to participate in cooperative partnership and community, You have to cooperate. You have to bring something desirable to the table. You have to contribute alongside everyone else as fundamentally equal human beings. Like, that's not an unmeetable standard, right? So when humans live naturally, which is to say matriarchally, right, within communities that center children first and foremost, women are capable of meeting all needs, right? Hunting, gathering, child rearing. We are able to do it all together with other women, with children, right? And men can hang if they want to cooperate, or they can get lost if they don't, right? Go live in isolation if you want to be antisocial. Those are your options. To live in cooperative community, you cooperate. If you want to be antisocial, you choose to live in isolation. That's the fork in the road. But that truth makes men feel disposable and inadequate, right? Egoless. So patriarchy was created to break communal living and individual sovereignty, to isolate and disempower women, to force us to pour all of that creative communal energy that we evolved to reciprocate with other women and children, right? To instead pour all of that into subsidizing one individual man. And that's the only way that male supremacy can be engineered. It has to be siphoned out of women. So, in other words, patriarchy created gender norms to break the logic of community, to enforce male private for-profit ownership of women in the pursuit of engineering male supremacy. All right, we're going to wrap it there. Woo! Like and subscribe for weekly videos. Drop a line in the comments. I always love to hear your thoughts. And I'll see you next time. Oh, I'm on TikTok at Coco Has Ideas, and I always have free writing up at powerculturecoco.substack.com.